Good morning and welcome to WSAU Feedback. I'm Meg Ellefson. Thank you for joining me on this Tuesday. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad it's not Monday. Although I did say to Chris just a few moments ago, is it just Tuesday? Because it feels like a full week of Tuesdays. But, are Tuesdays the worst days? No, I think it's Mondays. But good news is it's not Monday. And even better news, I have a great guest on the air with me this morning. Former Lieutenant Governor Rebecca Kleefisch, and as I like to refer to her as future Governor Rebecca Kleefisch. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Meg. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm awesome. I don't think Tuesdays are so bad. Mondays aren't the worst either. I had fun yesterday.
Did you? Oh, well, you must have.
Did.
You must have been off then, because how much fun can you have when you're working?
Well, yes and no. I did one fun thing in the morning before I had a bunch of meetings. We went downtown Milwaukee to the immersive Van Gogh exhibit.
Oh.
My kids and I and my husband, we were tourists in our own home state. And so this is a traveling exhibit, and you kind of walk into the projection of all of these Van Gogh paintings. It's absolutely cool, and it's a really neat experience. But, every single time you go into Milwaukee, I suppose, to enjoy something cool and cultural like that, it is paired with the realization that because of bad leadership and because of leftist tactics in Milwaukee and the leadership of Tony Evers, or should I say probably lack thereof, the crime statistics in Milwaukee are in the back of your mind, and that shouldn't be the case, Meg.
Well, don't worry, Rebecca. A trolley will fix everything, right?
Right.
Speaking of failed leadership and Tom Barrett.
That's the sad thing, because when you think about their infrastructure investments, the trolley was a big choice of Tom Barrett, the mayor in Milwaukee, and look at the ridership numbers. I routinely say to people who are big fans of high-speed rail, there is only one rail line in the world that makes money. It's the Tokyo to Osaka line in Japan. And the idea that something like this would make money in a state like Wisconsin is just a fallacy. It's kind of silliness. And you see these big city mayors countrywide try and make these infrastructure investments to the detriment of other parts of their budget, like law enforcement, which is real infrastructure, right? And your city is unsafe, and your tourism numbers are going to go down, and your reputation for economic development is dinged. And this is just poor decision making, and you see the governor of the state supporting this type of poor decision making. And it causes people across the state to wonder, well, is the crime coming to me next?
Well, so speaking of law enforcement, I saw your column about Tony Evers and his, calling for him to use State Patrol to get a handle on any violence that is occurring throughout Wisconsin. And if you'd like to comment on it, I know our listeners would like to hear about, your idea about how Tony Evers should be taking, I don't want to say taking advantage of, but should be exhibiting leadership qualities by really protecting the communities that need our law enforcement.
Mike, this is a commonly used tool for governors to keep their state safe. Violent crime is on the rise. We know that homicides have doubled in Milwaukee and nearly doubled in Madison. But then when you start to see shootings in areas that are typical family areas or areas where you may bring guests when they come into Wisconsin, you have to start to be concerned. There was a shooting in the Wisconsin Dells, a drive-by this spring. A few weeks ago, there was a shooting on Water Street in Milwaukee. And before that, there was a shooting just off of State Street in Madison. These are typical places where you bring tourists or guests. The Dells is a family-friendly destination. And so my suggestion to Governor Tony Evers is, in order to get a handle on crime right now in Wisconsin, why not use the well-trained, responsive Wisconsin State Patrol? They are regularly used for things like Oktoberfest in La Crosse. They were used in Kenosha during the riots. You remember when we had the protests for Act 10 and they tried to recall me and Governor Walker.
Mm-hmm.
Well, during all those protests, the State Patrol was there. They're trained in local law enforcement, and their excellent training provides them with the ability to assist in cases like this where you need local law enforcement continuing to do their job rather than bringing everybody back on overtime just to patrol your high traffic areas during weekend festivals. There was a fire in Milwaukee a couple weeks ago, Meg. The firefighters didn't even have the full ability to combat it because as they were trying to fight this fire, there were people coming up and stealing tools off the sides of the fire engine. This is what law enforcement is dealing with in our big cities. They need help, and we need a governor who is not soft on crime and believes in catch and release policies, but we need someone instead with the leadership to say, we're going to make all of our streets safe, and we're not going to let this crime spill all over the state.
Well, I have a lot more confidence that you, a woman running for as governor, and I, would love it if you could tell me that today, but that you have more, and I know I can say this on the air, cojones than Tony Evers would with regard to making decisions about protecting our state. I mean, I'm particularly concerned. You talk about Water Street in Milwaukee, and one of my sons lives in Milwaukee, and I think when you're young, you don't think about your mortality, and you don't think sometimes about how unsafe a community is because it just doesn't occur to you. But I'm very concerned about safety throughout the state, and really ultimately the lack of respect I think that Democrats show to our law enforcement officers has never been more apparent here. I was just talking in the Wisconsin Morning News this morning about how Wausau has a policing task force, which is ultimately policing our police and making them feel, I think, on edge about doing their job and fulfilling their duties to serve and protect our communities. And, I question Tony Evers' ability or commitment to standing behind our law enforcement.
Well, you're absolutely right to question that. I mean, in the moments really after the police-involved shooting down in Kenosha of Jacob Blake, you saw Tony Evers come out and make a statement that basically fanned the flames of culture war and supported the Jacob Blake side of things without ever even reviewing the case. We have three branches of government for a very important reason, Meg. And the executive branch is not designed to sit there and pass judgment. That is, in fact, our judicial branch. And for him to rush to judgment and use his bully pulpit of the governor's office to try and usurp the role of our judicial branch of government and basically be the jury and the judge in a case that hadn't even yet been reviewed is absolutely wrong. He fanned the flames, and people died in Kenosha. We had businesses burned to the ground. The flames were seen from coast to coast on TV. That is how Wisconsin was known. And now, because we have this style of leadership and this defund the police mentality, we have crime rates going up and criminals believing that they can literally get away with things because Tony Evers vetoes bills that are tough on crime. And that's wrong because people want to feel safe in their own neighborhoods, regardless of where those neighborhoods are. Good people should not feel like their lives are in jeopardy, and the bad guys should not get away with it.
Future Governor Rebecca Kleefisch on the line with me this morning. I'm going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll resume our conversation more specifically about Governor Veto and what he did up in our listening area with regard to the mill bill, the Versa paper mill bill and how it's going to affect the communities of Wisconsin Rapids and Park Falls. So we'll be back with former Lieutenant Governor Rebecca Kleefisch right after this break. Good morning and welcome to WSAU Feedback. I'm Meg Ellefson. Thank you for joining me this morning. On the phone with me this morning is former Lieutenant Governor Rebecca Kleefisch, and we were just about to discuss the favorite nickname for Governor Veto. I mean Governor Evers, and his delight in taking credit for the Republican tax cuts in this latest budget. And, it's funny how he takes credit for the good and blames the Republicans for the bad.
Isn't it funny that we all have that experience of having that one group project, either in school or maybe at work, and you work so hard at that project, and then there's that one guy who does absolutely nothing, doesn't show up until the very end when the project is so well done, it gets an A, and he's the one who marches around taking all the credit for it. That right now is Governor Tony Evers, because if you take a look at what he really wanted, he actually put pen to paper. He actually told us what he really wanted. He wanted $1 billion tax increase, Meg. That is what he put in his executive budget, because in the state of Wisconsin, the governor actually puts out his own version of a budget first before the legislature ever builds the budget that will eventually be enacted with a combination of the governor's signature and vetoes. So that's what happened. He put out his executive version of the budget. It had $1 billion tax increase in it. Not only that, but he peeled away Wisconsin's right to work status. He stopped in its tracks expansion of school choice, and he repealed Act 10, which has now saved the taxpayers of Wisconsin $15 billion. And this was Tony Evers' vision for our state. Backward-thinking, failed leadership. But thankfully, the Republican majorities in the legislature said, nope. In fact, the people of Wisconsin are so resilient that they produced a huge $4.4 billion surplus, and that money belongs to them. And so Governor Tony Evers wound up signing a budget that does 2/3 funding of schools and gives a $3.4 billion tax cut. But now you see this revisionist history of Tony Evers going out and saying, oh, yeah, I did a tax cut. That was not Tony Evers' tax cut. That was a legislature's tax cut. We need to give credit where credit is due and not allow this governor to take credit for a tax cut that he never wanted. He wanted $1 billion tax increase.
I do think it is. I mean, as you said too, I saw your tweet. It's laughable what he's taking credit for, and your analogy about the guy who takes credit for all the for the A+ on the group project. Oh my gosh, doesn't everybody hate that guy? I do. But the idea that he is now taking credit for a tax cut, yet he took his veto pen to a number of measures in the Republican budget that would have helped small businesses, that whole personal property tax, and also even just putting money away for a rainy day fund. Evidently, Tony Evers doesn't believe in saving money. If you've got money, I guess it burns a hole in Tony Evers' pocket.
That's not his life experience, though, Meg. Think about it.
Right.
His life experience is in government bureaucracy. And so he has never felt the pressures of needing a rainy day fund because finances are tight. He has always received his paycheck from a government job, and government is always flush with cash, according to Tony Evers' mindset, because he's never had that scarcity outlook. I mean, all of us who have been in the private sector and lived through the deep recession back in 2007 through 2009 know what it feels like to have to dip into our savings account, our rainy day fund. A lot of people who were laid off because they were told they were non-essential by Tony Evers' government know what it is like to have that scarcity and fear mindset of being thankful that there is some savings set aside, or deeply concerned because there is not. That's what that rainy day fund is there for. And he doesn't understand. He has never had to develop that perspective. And I think that makes him out of touch with what the rest of us are going through. I don't think that he feels the pressures of inflation. I don't think that he is concerned for the people of the state's finances. And I think that he simply wants to take credit for this Republican tax cut because he knows that he's going into an election year, and allowing people to keep more of their own money is a popular concept because why wouldn't it be? People
Right.
earned that, not government.
Well, in our remaining minute, let's talk about the Verso Mill bill,
Sure.
and unfortunately, how I don't know, he's not taking responsibility for having vetoed that, but yet turning the blame onto Republicans for somehow rejecting the funding. But this is part and parcel Tony Evers.
So this is Tony Evers vetoing this rescue for local workers and the local economy out of the budget. Now, State Senator Pat Teston was a big champion of this because this is his district. And I remember him calling me up and sharing with me that there were grown men in tears talking to him about their life savings and their life's work and what are they supposed to do. Because paper is a part of and timber industry, part of our DNA in Wisconsin. And here you have the Verso Mill shutting down, people losing their jobs, and Senator Teston saying, hey, we need to have you use this federal money because heaven knows the federal government is just printing money right now and sending it to states like Wisconsin. And he said, you need to use your federal money in order to allow a loan that will allow the rescue of this mill. And now there is apparently a buyer for the mill. And yesterday, Democrats came out with their own version, not using federal dollars, but instead using state dollars to make this happen. But the unfortunate thing is every day that goes by where Tony Evers is not talking to Republican legislators, the people who are in charge in that building, is a day where the people of Wisconsin are not getting a value out of their government. People just want a legislature that actually has a seat at the table in Tony Evers' office. And he refuses to talk with them. He refuses to engage them. And again, the revisionist history that he tells is that this is just simply not his fault. It is. When you have the bully pulpit, when you are the governor of a state, it is your responsibility, your duty to the people of Wisconsin to actually spend time with your co-equal branch of government.
Future Governor Rebecca Kleefisch on the line with me. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. Come on back anytime and keep up your hard work, and look forward to you announcing on my program first.
Thanks, Meg. You keep up the good fight. Thanks to all your listeners for fighting every day, too.
Thanks. Have a great day. It's 8:30 now, and up next is the news, followed by your calls on feedback. And I had such good reception from this call yesterday. I want to continue the conversation about what you would say to someone who knocks on your door to encourage you to get the experimental shot. Would encourage you to call in now, 715-845-2155, and we'll chat on air after the news. Up now.